Welcome everyone to our Land Trust's first Zoom conservation celebration. This is unprecedented times is a phrase that's gotten well worn over the last several months. So I will just I'll just say that that UVLT staff are really grateful to speak with those of you who are joining us tonight, to speak with you from the outdoors, where you have helped us conserve and steward it, and this outdoors that has inspired and sustained so many people in anxious and difficult times. UVLT's former board chair, Bob Wetzel, has observed sort of a favorite phrase of his that the landscape here is the backbone, not the background of life here in the Upper Valley. And the truth of that has been made really plain this spring and summer. And so here we are. To be frank, planning for this meeting, event, extravaganza has been fairly daunting. None of us are experts with technology, and we are all busy with land conservation and stewardship and community-driven programming. So we haven't done rehearsing, and we're not really sure what to expect. I did anticipate and worry about whether I would run out of my battery. I didn't think about deer flies landing on my screen, but so we're going to sort of play this by ear. UVLT staff is a brave team of people, and we hope that you are forgiving. And we have some beautiful places to bring you. So bear with us for 30 minutes or so, and we will share some stories and conversation. This is an event sort of in lieu of the in-person annual gathering that we often have in May and June, but it is not going to follow the usual format. I'm not going to report to you. We're not doing a lot of introductions. So I encourage you to switch to your gallery view at some point if you like, so that you can see who else is joining us in this gathering. Our plan is that 5 of us, myself, Peg Marins, Jason Berard, Alison Marcioni, and Paul Blasovich, will speak from our remote locations. Robin Killfeather Mackey is going to be our safety net and anchor from a solid internet connection and a large monitor at UVLT's office. Since the 5 of us are on tiny screens, Robin is going to coordinate the Q&A, and I encourage you to use the chat box in the Zoom view to type in questions so Robin can read them, and also call on you to ask you to show us where you are. And where I am is at Pinnacle in Lyme, a fabulous place to see a sunset. Actually a fabulous place to be almost any time, but a really nice place to see a sunset. It's a little hard for me to see what I can show you on my screen, but looking west which is kind of behind me, if I turn around and look west, I can see into Vermont, Houghton Hill and High Peak, and the Palisades in Fairleigh, and up to Wrights Mountain in Bradford. And looking southwest, way down the valley, I can see Ascutney. I expect that Ascutney is in the view shed of many people on this call tonight. At least I know it's in the view shed of some UVLT staffers. And I know there's some people planning to join this call from Reading, and I imagine it's in their view shed as well. It's been about 35 years since UVLT founder Dana Meadows described UVLT by saying, UVLT is large enough to see the valley whole and small enough to listen to your voice. Mm-hmm. And Dana was a visionary for sure, but I'm not thinking that she imagined that today there would be a tool that made it where we really can see the valley whole and we really can listen to each other in real time tonight. It's now 35 years after she said that, we're looking out, we're seeing the valley whole, 55,000 acres of conserved land and an immense amount of generosity and hope and hard work and lots of hands and hearts that are holding this landscape together and holding us all up. And for that, I'm really, really thankful and just so glad to join with you tonight. And with that, I would like to hand the mic, such as it is, over to Paul, who is about, I think, 6.5 to 7 miles from me as the crow flies on the back slope of the Palisades at Maury Mountain Conservation Area.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeannie. Hey there, everybody. My name is Paul Blasovich, and I work as the Outreach and Donor Programs Coordinator at UVLT, currently at Maury Mountain in Fairleigh, where we've recently completed building a trail system here with volunteers. We were talking a little bit about that before we started the annual meeting. One of my favorite parts of this position is being able to interact with volunteers in the outdoors every week. Since I began working for UVLT in July of last year, I've been able to learn from the expertise of seasoned volunteers and also had the opportunity to educate first-time trail builders. I'd say there are about 3 interactions that I'm going to go over here with these volunteers that summarize my first year with UVLT. First, I think about a corporate volunteer program workday from last fall. Resource Systems Group from White River Junction came out to Lime Pinnacle and we built a short section of trail. We went from thick brush to a completed trail within just 1 day, and this group got to experience the satisfaction of a completed project that the public could now walk on. After that full day of trail work, I joined them at one of their coworkers' houses in Lime for a celebration, and I got to see these folks go through multiple stages of team building in just that 1 day, using a level of teamwork that they don't usually tap into during a normal workday in their office. It made me so happy to see them end the day feeling more acquainted with one another compared to how they started the day, laughing, playing guitar, and getting to talk to each other as people, not just coworkers. Second, I think about working with high schoolers at some of our conservation areas. The Hanover High School Youth in Action program joined me for 2 days of trail work at Lime Hill this past winter, and while they already had developed strong bonds through volunteering with one another on a weekly basis, none of them had ever participated in trail work. This group fell in love with caring for trails, and their enthusiasm for being in the outdoors reminded me why I'm in this field. It's so important to cultivate a passion for land stewardship in our youth, hopefully bringing about the next generation of conservation workers and supporters. Lastly, I'd like to end with a quote from a volunteer. Jeff Cornish is one of our most consistent and passionate volunteers from Hypertherm. He and I were building a new shed at the Brookmead Food Pantry Garden in Norwich, Vermont, and I asked how much time he had put into designing, preparing, getting the materials, and now building this structure. He said he had put more than 40 hours into this project. And I said, that's more than Hypertherm pays for, right? And he responded with, yeah, but it's all worth it for a great organization like UVLT. And I'd say that just about sealed it for me. To have a volunteer be this passionate about helping us with our mission told me that UVLT and all of us are on the right path. We wouldn't be able to do all that we do without the help from our community, and it's a pleasure to be involved with so many of these great volunteers while working with UVLT. And I think I will pass it off after that.
Hey, yeah. So speaking of Brookmead, I'm going to talk about the Brookmead Food Pantry Garden a little bit. My name is Alison Marcioni, and I'm the Programs Director at the Upper Valley Land Trust. Tonight, I am out at Lake Runnymede in Windsor. I'm going to show you guys just how beautiful this spot is. Gorgeous lake. Conserved with UVLT, I think this is the only spot where it's conserved instead of an owned property. And unfortunately, I couldn't be at the garden tonight because of some service issues with the cell phone service there. But I hope I can paint sort of a vivid picture of the garden for you with my words. So the garden started last year in 2019, sort of as a way for UVLT to use our owned land to serve the whole community. We started this garden in partnership with Willing Hands. So we grow the food there and we donate it to Willing Hands, and they distribute it throughout the Upper Valley to people who are food insecure in our communities. So last year we planted 1/8 of an acre. We planted just 2 crops, potatoes and kale. That's what Willing Hands told us they needed. And I have no experience with growing crops, right? I've had a backyard garden, but I've never done anything on a large scale before. But we had a successful first year, and we planned an expansion over the winter of going from 1/8 of an acre to 1/4 of an acre. And I bought seeds and I planned, and it was all going to be great. Then the pandemic hits, and you know, we all start working from home. Things are really sort of upheaved, and we start to see reports of growing food insecurity and supply chain disruption in our area. And then Jeannie calls me at home one day and was like, what would you think if we expanded the food pantry garden to the whole field? And so that's 3/4 of an acre, 3 times the expansion we were planning, 6 times what we did last year. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we could totally do that. Feeling a little skeptical, but you know, we can do it. And you know, I said, we have the funds and the time to commit to this. We can do it. When you actually see 3/4 of an acre tilled up, and you know that you're responsible for planting and weeding and watering that, it's incredibly daunting. So I knew the only way that we were going to be able to achieve success in this program would be to engage with the community and really get a lot of community support and a lot of volunteers. And the first thing that I asked for community support was a donation of rhubarb plants. We wanted to have sort of a perennial, sustainable source of food as a part of our garden. I put it, you know, out on the listservs, kind of tentatively asking early spring, and I got an enormous response. I spent 2 days driving around Norwich, Hanover, and Hartford. I had between 50 and 60 rhubarb plants donated to us, which was way more than we needed. We planted about 30 of them and donated the rest of them to Willing Hands to plant at their facility in Norwich. And so that was an amazing outpouring. And since then, it has just been phenomenal. We've had wheelbarrows donated, garden carts donated, hoses, a weed whacker. It's been an incredible amount of support. But when it came time, you know, in early May to start planting, I got a little nervous because what we really needed more than anything was many hands. And I put it out the call on the listserv, and I'm happy to say that now I have 55 names on our volunteer email list. We get lots of volunteers every week, lots of the same people every week, where I can see their happy faces, or half their happy faces, because they're wearing masks. We're all wearing masks. And you know, it's just been a truly rewarding experience for me to see members of our community come together on a project like this, sort of in service to their community, helping to feed people in need. So it's been really amazing.
Alison, that experience with the garden that you're talking about reminds me of something that one of our landowners up in Newbury said to me once. Larry Scott said to me once that farming is an exercise in hope. And the more I think about that, the more I think that's really true. Hi, everybody. My name's Jason Berard. I'm the Stewardship Director at Upper Valley Land Trust. I'm sitting here at Up on the Hill Conservation Area in Charlestown, and I am joined by our Patch and Miller intern, Abby Berard, who also happens to be my daughter. Allison helped with Allison and Paul with the food pantry garden this summer. Strong work. Even if you haven't been to Up on the Hill Conservation Area, you might have seen it in the field notes segment we posted earlier this spring about leatherwood. It's an uncommon native shrub that grows in rich soils in the forest. And I came across some when I was out here one day and recorded a video about it. As soon as I recorded the video, I called Harvey and Chris and said, Harvey, Chris, you'll never guess what I saw. I saw some leatherwood out here. And they said, oh, yes, we know exactly where you were when you recorded that, which was just amazing to me, given that this property is 1,100 acres. But they really know every single tree, shrub, and wildflower out here. That deep knowledge came into play recently. We were working on building a new trail on the property to make a new loop. And Chris suggested a loop that used a segment of trail that her father had put in years ago. Last week, we were able to build that trail with a group from Red River, a business located in Claremont, which encourages their teams to do community-based service work. And the trail is done, and it'll go up on our map soon as Andy can carve out some time to make a new trail map down here. In a few weeks, we're going to begin a timber harvest down here, and we're going to, as a part of that timber harvest, we're going to reserve out 12 cords of firewood that will go into a community fuel assistance program that we're going to establish here, similar to the fuel assistance program that's based out of the Norwich Woodshed, which we've contributed, I think, 11 cords of wood to so far. And, you know, we hope that in the years to come, we'll actually establish another community food garden down here, the same as we have at Brookmead. Abby, maybe you'll come be our garden manager for that too.
Maybe.
Anyway, you know, working together with the resources that and energy that UVLT can bring to a project, we're building a community asset here founded on the Hill's generosity and built on their deep knowledge and love of this place.
And while we're talking about Up on the Hill, I want to say that we are holding our first in-person event at Up on the Hill on Saturday. It's called Mission Monarch. We're going to be out there monitoring, counting milkweeds, eggs for monarchs, and caterpillars for monarchs. And so if anyone's interested in that, send me an email and I'll put you on our registration list. Space is limited because of social distancing, but there are a few spots left, so email me.
Great. Well, this is Peg Marins. I'm here. I'm the Vice President of Conservation. And Jason, I couldn't agree more with you about the generosity of the Hills gift at Up on the Hill and its significance to the community and to the Upper Valley Land Trust and the opportunities it represents. It's really a community asset. And speaking of community assets, this is, I'm sitting here, you can see the Smith Pond behind me, a 63-acre pond. I wandered in here tonight with my daughter and she went for a swim. We passed through a hardwood forest, bog bridges and bridges that were built by volunteers of the Upper Valley Land Trust along the way. Past visits, I've seen black bear with cubs, and this evening we were greeted by a porcupine and a baby, mother porcupine and baby, who were actually in a tree behind me. They're actually at the base of the tree behind me. I could try to focus over there, but it might be too dark. Yeah, it's going to be too dark. They are coming down from that tree right now. And a loon went by not too long ago. So pretty special place here. It is one of my favorites in the Upper Valley. And I guess if there's anything that the last several months have drilled home for me, is just the significance of having open spaces available close to my home, within walking distance or a short driving distance. And a place like Smith Pond is large and charismatic, but I've also come to realize that it really doesn't matter the size of the property. The open space is the piece that is important. And I thought I'd share with you tonight a little, it's not really a story, but just a little, share with you, there is a story to it. So in December, we protected a piece of land that is in the village of Norwich. It's only 8 acres in size. There's a meadow there. It was protected, donated with a donated conservation easement from Robert Parker. And Robert, this is a piece of land that was in Robert's family for several years, since 1924. When he was growing up, they were raising cows there. And it's now a place that he mows. He mows a path around the edge and people come and walk there. It is habitat for pollinators and birds and other wildlife. And it's right along Blood Brook as well. And this is a place that people in the village can walk to. And it's a place that, again, we can recharge and reset, something that has been so important during this time. And there's a garden that Robert has planted in the center of the field, and vegetables for himself and flowers for others to enjoy. So I want to read to you a letter that was sent to Robert by a woman in the village. And this was sent to him before he protected his meadow, but it's, to me, it's the sentiments in the letter, I believe, are felt by many in the village. And I think it conveys a bit, probably to Robert. It's letters like this that help to motivate people like Robert to protect their land for others. It says, "Dear Mr. Parker, finally I found out who owns and caretakes the lovely meadow behind the Catholic Church. I believe it is you. Thank you for being so generous for sharing this beautiful spot in downtown Norwich. A friend suggested walking here. I am always on the lookout for the flat areas to walk with my 88-year-old mother, and this location has turned out to be perfect. With much appreciation, Kristen Close and Greta Brown." And then I love this. "P.S. The photo on the cover is one of the zinnias from last summer. Won't be long." So I don't have the picture of the zinnia, but you know, it just open space, whether we're here or where any of you are tonight, all of us are tonight, so important. And I just want to thank everyone on the call and all of you for helping us and supporting us so we can do this for you. Thank you, Peg, and thank you all UVLT staff people who grabbed onto this idea of seeing the valley whole and coming to you from all over the area. In a moment, I will ask Robin to begin coordinating questions, selecting questions from the chat box. Before I turn it back to her, I just want to share a thought that I've had as I've listened to both Jason and Peg about these properties that are so beloved by their owners who know them so well and have been such good stewards, and then how these places are are loved by other members of the community as they learn about them. Places like up on the hill where our staff and members of the public now are learning the things that Harvey and Chris have known, and are going to be able to carry that knowledge into the future, into times that we can't imagine, just as Dana couldn't imagine that we'd be sitting outdoors with our phones and our selfie sticks talking to each other from far corners of the Upper Valley. So again, thank you for being, oh, look, I love it.
So this is Peg's daughter, Anna, and I'm here with my mom here at Smith Pond, and this is the mother, Porcupine, who's been joining us today. She's walking away now, but we had a little porcupine visit us, so definitely a feature of this conversation of the nature and getting to be out here.
Marvelous. Thank you, Anna. And back to you, Robin.
Sure. And just to briefly introduce myself, I'm Robin Kilfeather-Mackey, and I'm the VP of Operations. As Jeannie said, I'm here in the home office, kind of quarterbacking this event, and I want to let everybody know I also had a little animal visit. I had an ant walk across my lap in the middle of this, and I tried not to jump. So everybody's having a little bit of wildlife tonight. We have a couple of questions in the chat that we'll get to, but I know that June Hamburger would like to make a comment or two, and then we'll move to the chat box. June.
Thank you very much. So given the chance, I just want to put a plug in for legacy gifting to UVLT. I'm June Hamburger, a board member. And Rick Rush, who's also on this call, you'll see him here. He's a past board chairperson. So Rick and I have talked with a number of donors recently about the Land Trust's commitment to watch over the 55,000 acres we've conserved in perpetuity. That means forever. We are in the forever business. So this is long after all of us have passed on. So because Rick and I are so passionate about protecting Upper Valley lands, we're each making end-of-life gifts to support the Land Trust. We and others in the Swan Bedrock Society, our legacy gifters, recognize now more than ever, as Peg said, the importance of open land, forests, fields, and streams. We want the grandchildren of our grandchildren to hear the birds chirping in the woods, to smell the scent of freshly cut grass, and to hear the rush of an overflowing stream. So we hope you'll consider joining us in making a legacy gift to the Land Trust. Please feel free to call Jeannie or Rick or myself, and we'll be happy to answer any questions, and happy hiking. Thank you.
Thank you, June. Well, let's go to the chat. We do have a couple questions for the staff from the audience. And actually, I wanted to start with Steve Schwartz, because I vote you having the most beautiful view of a guest. So Steve, could you put yourself off mute for a second and just tell us where you are?
So that is, I am actually not there because I'm sitting in Maryland, and that's one of my virtual backgrounds, but that is my wife's family's property in the north end of Lake Maury, with Patty Armstrong knows quite well, and over there is Maury Mountain. So
it's a beautiful spot, and you totally tripped me up. I had no idea that was a virtual background. It looks great.
No, that's good. So I'm sitting here in the middle of a big thunderstorm, so if I lose you, you'll know why.
Okay. So Jeannie, Steve's question is really about a topic that's been on many of our minds, which is, you know, what operational challenges has the organization gone through during these COVID times, and has it prevented you the team from meeting its stewardship obligations for its properties, and really how are you managing the situation generally?
And Jeannie would expect that question from me.
So, so I will start to answer it, and I will invite Peg and Jason to join in too. UVLT's team has really dug in and been very creative about figuring out ways to adapt to the public health guidance and mandates. Our headquarters on Buck Road has been closed to the public for a number of months, and most staff people, staff people have been working from their homes. We now are managing some work at our office in a very carefully planned and limited way. We have adapted quite strongly. And I would say we've had to embrace new technology. We've had to, move a lot of our communication away from in-person communication, which is, initially took some getting used to because we're a very personable sort of neighborly group. But I think in some ways, the new technology has, for instance, allowed us to have an event like this one where, Steve, you're part of the conversation, even though you're in a thunderstorm in Maryland. So
yeah, fortunately, conservation easement monitoring is an excellent social distancing way to spend your time. So our volunteers really stepped in and took up that call, and what Jeannie said about the monitoring with pilots, we had scheduled 90 easement monitoring visits to be done that way, and we found out in mid-March that we were not going to be able to use that tool, and so we had 90 more easements to monitor by the end of June than we thought, and volunteers just stepped in and took up the call and got it done. And other colleagues did some cross training and also did some easement monitoring. Thank you, Paul. And thank you, Allison. And you did a bunch too. So yeah, we adapted. It's interesting to me that it was actually embracing, normally you think of a time like this as being a time where you embrace new technologies to adapt. But it was our embracing of this new technology to us, which was using pilots, that we then had to sort of temporarily back away from and go back to the tried and true, which is get it done on the ground with staff and volunteers.
Thank you, Jason and Jeannie. Let's go on to the next question. This one's actually for Allison. And it seemed, and Renee's still in the call, and she was actually at the Listen Food Center pantry this afternoon, and said there was very little fresh produce until Willing Hands drove up. And she was wondering if any of the produce that showed up there today was actually from Brookmead.
It's possible. I don't know what was on their truck today. I know that we've recently delivered shell peas to them. We've only had 2 crops come out of our garden so far. Those were radishes and shell peas, but if either of those were in that delivery, they could very well have been from us. The next stuff coming up from us is probably going to be potatoes and squash. So it'll be a couple more weeks still before we're harvesting anything else from our garden. But yeah, we had 200 pounds of radishes. That's a lot of radishes.
Radishes. And I think we've got one more question. I'm not sure if this is either for Paul or for Jason. Folks want to know how the chestnut trees are doing. Perhaps you could give a little bit of background about that project for those people that may not be aware, and give them an update on the status of those nuts.
Sure. Let's see. So that the history of that project is that a few years back we did a large clearing on this property, and sort of coincidentally, simultaneously to that, we were approached by a landowner, Robert Lucier, up in Orford, and he had 80 to 100 chestnut seeds on his property, chestnuts, because he happened to have two chestnuts on his property, and he was looking for a place that he could donate them and have them planted. So we came to up on the hill. We've got a nice southwest facing slope to plant them on. And we put them in last fall. I think we ended up putting in about 80 seeds. Sorry, I should back up just a little bit. The year before that, we had put in 4 saplings. The saplings are doing well. The seedlings, we've done some, qualitative data, but not any quantitative data. So there are seedlings coming up, but we have not gone and looked at every single flagged location of a seedling to see what our specific success rate is. And that's something that we need to do soon. So good stuff so far, but stay tuned for more information. Did you have anything to add, Paul?
That was great. That was a perfect summary.
Okay. I think we've got time for just really one more question or comment. I know that at least I was feeling like there was kind of a flurry of conservation activity at the end of our year, Peg, and I thought if you wanted to give just a quick recap of some of the highlights of the conservation projects for the past year to the group.
That would be great. So when Steve asked how busy we've been, and Jeannie said we've been busier than ever, we sure have. So I'll start with that period of time first. From mid-March to the end of June, we actually closed on 3 projects, and they were all very different. One was a planned gift. It was a gift of land in Tunbridge. We also purchased 187 acres to add to our Ely Mountain Conservation Area, purchased with funds from the Fund for Conservation Action and a little bit from the town of Thetford. And we protected a very special property in Heartland, the Garvin Hill. On Garvin Hill, it's our 2nd sugar bush that has been protected by the Richardson family, and actually their 3rd project because they had protected their farm many years ago as well. So that project wrapped up. It was a VHCB and NRCS funded project for sugar bush, and that wrapped up in June.
Jeannie, I think we're at about time. I've been watching the time carefully. Want to be respectful of folks' time. I don't know if you have any last words for the group.
I just want to thank everybody for joining us. It's been really, as the staff members, we're all mobilizing to do this call. Jason started texting us about what he was seeing and where he was, and we were all telling people about what we were hearing as we were, I heard a barred owl as I was walking up the hill, and Peg and Anna saw the porcupine mother and baby. It's just a treat to be able to be out here and also feeling connected to all of you. Is UVLT's resilience, its financial resilience and its mission resilience starts with people like you who are on this call, who are making this conservation and stewardship work happen. And it really, really matters. And we're just so glad to be working for you and with you. So usually I would say drive safe, but tonight, we're driving safe, hiking out and getting home. I hope all of you have a wonderful evening, and thanks again for your support.
Good night, everyone.
Take care. Be well.
Be safe.